Okay, welcome to the Nerdmusement podcast. I am the Count, and this is Quinn.
Yes, as indeed who I am.
We're starting this to just discuss some nerdy habits and things that nerds like to find amusing.
Anything that amuses nerds is nerd movement.
Who knows? Also, we need to copyright that very quickly.
Yes, exactly. It'll become our own.
Yes. Okay, so what's our first topic?
Let's see. Well, we went to Retropalooza this last weekend.
Yes, the weekend of October 23rd through 24th.
Yes. I feel we should always start each show discussing something we actually did, if possible, as opposed to things we're just, bitching about.
Well, that is half of nerddom.
Yes, yes.
Back in the old days when we were all confined to our comic book stores and video game arcades and back alley risk games.
Yes. And this is Retropalooza 8 that was last weekend. I think the first one I went to was Retropalooza 3. Did you go before that one?
No, I think you dragged me to Retropalooza 3 as well.
Yes. And just for any listeners who may not be familiar with it, Retropalooza is the kind of retro gaming convention that's run by Shady J of the Game Chasers. It's kind of a friends and family event. He literally has friends and family on the team running the con with him, and then just uses his connections to other YouTubers who are friends of his to fill the guest list. And in this case, it really works because it means he's got a small team he can trust, and they were able to come back pretty fast this year to get things going again after the pandemic. All in all, I thought it was a pretty good show, pretty good attendance, very full dealer's room, which is a good surprise because there was some speculation it may not be.
Yes, and the arcade was full too.
Yeah, I think those are the machines that he's gathering for the barcade he's trying to open.
It's always the barcade.
Everyone
People
wants
always
a
have their Arcadias. Some people have magnificent ships. Other people's have barcades.
Indeed. And so let's go to the inevitable. Every time someone discusses a retro game, a convention visit, they have to discuss their pickups. So we'll just do that first to get it out of the way. Let's see, because I know I picked up for gaming, I picked up a copy of Shining Force Neo. Happy to see that. I thought I was kind of considering picking up a copy last time, the last convention before the pandemic started. Thought better of it and been regretting it ever since. It's haunted me every single day, every last single day, waking hour. I thought, wow, why didn't I grab that game? Okay, not really, but I still wanted it. So we're
That was
back.
an itch.
There you go. It has been scratched. At the same time, the dealer was a bundle deal. So I was looking around and noticed he had a copy of a Final Fantasy original NES cart. And, while I have like a ton of different copies of Final Fantasy for different platforms from re-releases over the year, and I could easily play it in any conceivable way right now, I haven't had the actual cart in a long time. And it's one of those things where you can collect for you connect to the spirit of the thing, or you connect to the actual physical object you have memories to. Usually I'm in the former, but in this case I'm in the latter. Just saw that cart and like, wow, I would really like to have that around again. So that was my big game pickup, was just Shining Force Neo and Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Which games did you pick up? I forget. I know we talked about, I was there when you picked them up. I forget which ones it was. Which games did you pick up?
Final Fantasy Tactics Advance for the GBA.
Right.
Donkey Kong Country 3 for the GBA, which is actually the Donkey Kong Country series on the GBA allowed them to add more story elements to the story and also update it a bit. So you get rid of stuff like N64 references and anything like that. But most of all, I picked up the limited run version of Blaster Master Zero too.
Yes, because you were going all over the place asking for that one. You were pushing them.
Well, I was looking for both of them. For those who don't know about Limited Run is a group of people who put out games on formats that are usually digital only. So some people consider it a scam. Some people consider it uncouth. Other people, I have a physical version of stuff now. So
Well, to be specific, a physical format. So they're
yeah,
making physical copies of games that are normally only available in digital.
yes. So the two, for instance, you have Bloodstained from the former producer of Castlevania, but he also did two download only games. So the Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. So Curse of the Moon 1 and Curse of the Moon 2 have both been produced by Limited Run in physical. Now, sometimes you can find them at Best Buy, but it's kind of a, you sometimes find them, sometimes you don't. So for instance, stuff like Shantae, usually you can find. Shantae is the half human genie.
Right. Let's see. I think all you picked up this time was you just did games, which makes sense. It's a show gaming convention, but then I had to go get weird and grab some Transformers.
There's nothing wrong with having a couple too many Transformers. I just try to hold it back to just Rodimus Prime.
Yes.
So many people have dogged on poor Rodimus over the years.
Well, it turns out I made a very good choice on that because I just picked up two, really. Actually, it was obviously there was the Energon version of Megatron, which was it was an out-of-box toy, really good shape, missing the mini con that was supposed to go with it, but the mini con for that one was lame, and it just looked really good, and they only wanted like $20 for it, so I was like, okay, you know what, I'll take it, I'll grab that. But the other thing was the Alacon, which Alacon is basically just he's one of the quintessent minion ones, like the Sharkticons, because he turns into
the one who has no name.
Shark.
It's the one.
But now he does. Now he's Alacon. See, they gave him a name. He's got a name. But here's the thing: I got it for $25, right? And it's like, well, it's the same price I've been seeing on Amazon, but you might as well just pick it up here, save the shipping, right? Well, I just checking on it a few days ago. It's going for almost $50 now. Yeah, it's shooting. So apparently that was a really good choice to go ahead and just grab it off the shelf there, because that is paying off.
How much is Hot Rod going for now? The 30 collection.
Oh, the one that's the one that's the movie series collection, or the studio collections, I think is what they're calling it.
Yeah, probably one of the best versions of Rodimus Hot Rod ever.
Yeah, the one that actually has the detachable buzz off from the movie and all that.
Yeah. And also, you don't want to take your masterpiece version of Rodimus out of the box.
Well, that one's actually holding up to $31. I think the official MSRP is $29.99. So, yeah, that one's actually staying at the proper price.
Well,
then again, it just came out how many months ago? So
about 9.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think they got a pretty good stock on that to begin with, and some reorders. So it's right now, I think the market's met on that one, but as time goes on and it starts getting, I'm sure that'll.
Well, the 2 GBAs I picked up, I checked out the pricing. Donkey Kong Country 3 is going for about $5 more than I paid, and Final Fantasy Tactics Advance is usually going for $10 more.
Yeah, and that I will admit, just in general, we talked to a lot of dealers while we were there. That's one of the great things about the show, that it is a friendly local show, so it's easy to talk to most of the dealers. They're willing to do a lot of just deals on the spot. I mean, if you're willing to buy, and especially if you're willing to do cash, I mean, they talk to you, and they look at the current price, think it over. You can kind of negotiate a little bit. Most conventions I go to, it's like everything's there, hooray, but it's always jacked up a couple of extra dollars, and unless you catch them at the very last moment when they're heading home on Sunday and really don't want to have to repack their stuff, they don't budge very much. And this is very different. They were definitely open, where, okay, if you're getting a couple of things and there's just straight cash on the table, let's talk numbers, and something could happen. So that was pretty cool, actually. They're appreciating that. Though, with the exception of, speaking of GBA games, when you were asking about Metroid Fusion, unfortunately, it looks like there wasn't room for a deal on that.
No, that's because of Metroid Dread. So you do about 20-year difference in, the series. For those of you who don't know, Metroid has had both the main series, which are Metroid 1, Samus Returns, which was originally on the Game Boy, Then you had Super Metroid, which is the third game. Then you had Metroid Fusion, which is the fourth game. Then you had a 20-year gap. And then you finally got Metroid Dread on the Switch, which is a very good game. But if you somehow lost your copy of Metroid Fusion at some point, darn that move, you know, you're kind of out of luck if you suddenly want to get a physical copy of it again, because
Yeah,
it's
I mean, how
gone
much was he
from,
asking? 100. How much was he asking?
100.
100 straight up. Okay, I think that was
Yeah.
even technically a good price. We were like looking at eBay. I think we're like, wow, that's actually low.
Yeah. Typically you can, it's been going for 120 in some cases, but if you had a full box, it's 200 minimum.
Yeah, so hopefully at some point Nintendo will actually re-release it, whether to another online expansion where they'll have like GBA games or something perhaps, or just remaster, or just something to get it out there because it's part of the overall Metroid plot. But if you actually want to play through that, you can't, or you're stuck paying 100, three fake digits to get your hands on this one game, which is gonna turn away most of your players who are considering getting into Metroid. So
Yeah, just
hopefully
throw, Metroid, all the Metroid, the, Metroid 2, maybe update it to the Metroid Samus Returns remake, then do Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion, call it the Metroid Collection, throw in Other M. Some people have been lately going crazy for Other M, which I'm kind of like, where were you guys 10 years ago? All I was hearing was, oh, I don't want to hear Samus talk. Okay. You do realize she's talked before in the games and it matched what her dialogue was in Fusion.
Well, so that's the other thing too. Actually, speaking of the price of Metroid Fusion, well, yes, there is definitely room for deals and some good prices. All in all,
Prices are
there's a
up.
lot. Yeah, big time. Especially on anything that's special edition, whether it's like a collector's box or the limited run games, all those editions. I remember we were walking around the Freaks and Geeks table and
Yeah.
amazing selection. I mean, wow. I mean, they really brought out some great stuff, but I don't think anything was below 100, 140 was like the lowest I think we saw on a special edition.
Oh, yeah.
Everything else like 200, 300. I think one or two items is 400, 500. It
In the
was
old terms of the economic people, if price if rates continue to go, I'll soon be able to pay off everything by selling one limited run game in 6 years.
which that seems because part of it is that there has been just a lot of a flurry of activity in the retro collecting market for the last 24, 36 months. I mean, it's been steadily going up, especially this last year or two, even three. You could say that the focus has definitely been there. A lot of people have been starting to put some money into it. But I think also at this point, it's just the general inflation is starting to kick in. I think we're starting to go from the retailer is just thinking like, oh, I paid this much for it, therefore I'll try to get this much margin back, to more terms of in their mind, if I sell this one particular special edition, I want to be able to pay some people's salaries for a couple of days off
Yeah.
that one sale. And what does that equal to me dollar wise? Boom, that's the price. And that's going to be several $100 at least. And that's assuming minimum wage. Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of where they are right now.
I don't think we're going to be able to see a world again where we have $50 GBA SPs just lying around.
Yeah, that's something that was missing. I mean, it was a great game selection. I was also happy to see some PSP stuff starting to show up more. But yeah, usually for the last couple of years when we've gone to these conventions, there's been like bins of GBA SPs just piled, and most of them are in terrible shape. I mean, a really good condition SP, that'd be put aside, that'd be put in a place of prominence, and probably cost you a little more. But
Yeah.
if you just wanted a GBA SP, sure, $50, pick one out of the bin that doesn't look too bad. Did not see that at all. That is definitely
I
not a
saw
thing
one
anymore.
and it was
Yeah.
in fairly good condition. But again, take care of your SPs because they're starting to disappear.
And apparently most people didn't, because I can't help but notice that in those bins, some of those poor SPs, I don't know what people were doing to them.
Remember, who was the primary audience? Children.
Yeah, but even
But
as a child, I could be wrong. I mean, I had a Game Boy. I had a Game Boy Color later on. I was never that rough on these things. I mean, I don't know what these kids are doing. I don't know if they're just like literally like, oh, somebody forgot to bring the ball. Let's use an SP. Yes, yes. But yeah, I think the overall takeaway is just that conventions are back. It looks like they're going strong. Both the attendees and the retailers and the guests are starting to show up again. But specifically in the retro collecting scene, the prices are spiking pretty bad. So there's still
yes.
some deals to be found, some stuff you can still collect without having to break the bank. But that line of big dollars for that special item versus stuff you can just pick up in bulk or on a whim, yeah, that line's coming down. More and more stuff's starting to go into that special category where you have to really get ready to get your wallet out.
Well, so let's go into, as you put it earlier, the conversational portion of our program. What's going on at the box office?
Yes, I actually just came from watching Dune a few hours ago, which is
Did you get
weird
the
because
spice?
they weren't giving out spice. It's a movie theater. The spice is a fictional thing. Anyway, it was a wonderful movie.
What? I'm pretty sure
Turned
the
out right.
Alamo Draft House probably has some form of, you know, muggy cinnamon beer or something.
Yeah, I just went to one of the local Cinemarks. It's and anyway, it was a great movie. That's the important thing. So and there's the morass that is modern Hollywood. One good movie has made it out at least.
Well, I had some issues, two mostly. I watched it on HBO Max, and my big issue is the Baron in the Baron Harkonnen are. How did they put Harkonnen in the new version? They didn't say it as Harkonnen, which
I
is
think
how
in
Harkonnen.
like Harkonnens or something like that.
Yeah,
Which
which I'm like,
it's fine. You know, you can pronounce it either way. It's clear who we're talking about.
well, if you're gonna, I've never heard anyone call them the Harkonnens, you know, for years, but that wasn't my issue. My issue was the Baron in the book and in most of the media that has been done since the arrival of the book. There's kind of a campiness to the Baron Harkonnen. Who can forget the glory of the Toto soundtrack? And they called his music the Floating Fat Man.
And
That,
he was in that he's this creature who just floats around and cackles and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
actually kind of preferred the version from the miniseries where they
Well,
took away. I mean, he almost became like a poetic character, and more importantly, and here's what I think is the big difference is if you take Dune just by itself, you can kind of characterize the Baron that way in some people's eyes. But if you start looking at all the books and the roles that the Baron plays over time, like manipulating Alia through her genetic memory, and then in later
well,
books,
let's not go too far into that.
but the point being, he's actually a very cunning figure at that point, and much more a figure of menace. Um,
Well,
so that comical version makes no sense, and that's why, for example, in the
actually, it
miniseries,
does.
they had to make him much more coherent as somebody who is cunning and dangerous, not
The
just crazy.
comical version in the books is canonical, but it's a mask to, you know, cover up the fact that, you know, well, he's the floating fat man. Everyone just assumes he's kind of this dullard, but he has a cunning mind. And when you take away his mask, you see who he really is. I don't like the fact that they took the mask away because that leaves so much on the floor. And I thought with the runtime of the first part of Dune that we were going to see more of the character interaction from the books. For instance, where was Fade? There was no mention
Yeah,
of Fade.
no draw. He doesn't appear at all.
Yeah.
He's supposed to appear for the next movie.
No, he was in that part of the book. It's not like,
Exactly. Yeah, he's just completely missing, which is odd. I mean, they don't necessarily need him. It's not a massive cut, but of all the things they took the time to add or tie in, and he's just gone.
well, they don't even name the Mentat Peter.
Indeed, and which is a little. I mean, it's again not a big thing, but it is a little odd. And actually, of all things that they're trying to talk about, little details trying to throw in beyond the conflict between Paul and Fade at the end. Oh yeah, spoiler warnings. Again, this book was written in 1965. So I'm gonna put that out there to anybody, you know. So at this point, if you haven't read it, that's kind of your problem. That is
As
a
I've
failure on
said
your
in the
part.
past,
So
we've gotten to the point in Final Fantasy VII that it's almost 25 years. If you don't know what happens to certain characters, it's your own
yes,
fault.
more importantly, this book has passed into the realm of literature. So it's like
Yes.
saying, yes, this is that category where like Romeo and Juliet. I mean, saying they die at the end. It's tragic.
No.
You should already know that.
Yes.
But anyway, going back. So at the end of Dune, Phaedra and Paul fight. And it's the culminating moment that ends the book. But it's also mentioned that Phaedra is actually part of that same breeding program that's supposed to produce the Quasi-Tetrarch. So him not being there, because he's kind of an alternate track that Ben Jessica had been pursuing, and in fact, he was supposed to be the preferred one. You know, Paul was supposed to have been Jessica was supposed to have a daughter, not a son, and that daughter was supposed to marry Phaedra. So his presence is important in a lot of ways. It's weird that he's not there and he's not even mentioned, and it's it's an odd. It's not doesn't break the movie at this point, but it's a little odd. It's a little weird.
Well, he's a very important character. The scene where the Baron and the Beast are talking, and the Baron says, "Squeeze, squeeze, Arrakis."
Oh, and that entire interplay that occurs is supposed to occur later, where it's Fade versus Raban, and
No,
highlighting
the
the difference between
Baron's
the
setting
two.
up Fade to be a
Yeah,
messianic figure to replace Raban.
exactly. Yes. So, but this that going to be kind of out now because Raban's he's already been done the squeeze line. He's already gone back in and started his thing. So, yeah, it's another element that's going to be missing. And going back to what the Baron is though too, and this is a point where I kind of agree on this little off because I liked the miniseries portrayal, and in that case, he's much more vocal. So he wasn't this random floating beast. Like, he actually had a lot to say, a lot to plot, and a lot to be menacing with. And that plays in again later to elements where he's going to be manipulating people even beyond the grave. But particularly in the scenes between him and Leto Atreides, you know, the "This is Conley" line where he's really digging in the vengeance. Uh, you know, that really lays him on
Oh,
up
yeah.
there, and he's not there at all. This is, I think that how many lines did they do the whole confrontation between Leto and the Baron in? Like,
Leto.
but it was a really short conversation
No,
before they
yeah.
had
It's
him.
like there's this fat guy, he's just eating, and where's the animus of 10,000 years of House Atreides versus House Harkonnen?
Yeah, he just does the one little sum up. You know, it's like it's like he's annoyed that he had to stop eating lunch to come and
He
say,
doesn't.
"Oh, I guess I'll take care of this real quick," as opposed to it's like, no. This is the culminating moment of his family's history. This is Conley. This is the joy in Vendetta,
Yeah.
and he particularly is the person who enjoys it the most. And
Well,
that whole element, that part of him is missing, which is like, huh, okay. You know, and still in Skarsgård, I could totally have seen him doing that. I could totally have seen
yeah.
him just going off and just
It's
really
like they
being,
neutered. That's my really big issue. They neutered the Baron.
yeah. It's so he becomes much less of a character of interest. He is just kind of a archetype now. Just they're
No,
fulfilling the
he's just a
role.
floating mountain who floats over you, and you think you're going to be squished by his massive belly from the fat suit.
Yeah, and he's doing a lot of killing himself. I'm noticing too, because in the book it's Peter who kills Dr. Yui.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Mentat kills him. I mean, this one it's the Baron. It's like, huh.
Well,
That's
they don't even name Peter. So, they give him a
yeah.
scene where he's talking to the the
Sardaukar.
Satiskar troops, and they're doing the
Yes. I love that scene. Sinks Lucis Secundus and the whole
yes.
Sardaukar cult mind
And
brainwashing and the way
they never
yeah.
named Peter. He's just standing there. Another thing that was weird about the Harkonnens, they're all bald.
Yeah, yeah. And what the heck is that creature? When the Ben Gesserit sister arrives and she orders it to leave, one, the fact that the voice works on it means it's intelligent and
And
we
biological.
and moves in a weird, almost kind of human way. You know, it has the 6 limbs.
I
That's
guess it might
yeah,
have been a creature from the Benny Talaxlu, but who cares? I don't
yeah,
know.
or just some abomination that the Harkonnen dudes.
Yeah, that was more a minor issue. I'm so steeped in Dune terminology and ideas that I'm kind of like,
Well, and that's
okay,
what makes the problem that we're not going to be like 100% behind it inevitable. I mean, because we just know so much about it. We're into there's always going to be some detail that we're going to harp on. But I think when we kind of step back a bit, though, it's a really good movie. It's fantastic visuals, really well shot.
yeah,
Got all
but
the key points and did them pretty well. The
if you
vision was
don't know
there.
what a guild navigator is when they say, and these guild navigators, where are the guild navigators? I don't see any guild navigators. Are the guys with the red stuff on their helmets, are they
Yeah.
navigators?
Well, and of
If
course,
you don't
the
know
actual
what the terms
navigators,
mean,
yeah, and the
you're
navigators
kind
are one
of
of those things
lost.
that really adds an element of of the truly alien what the spice can do. It gets in a way, it kind of even forecasts so many things down the road when you realize the spice it isn't just about visions. It can turn a human being into well, depending which of the prior movies you want to look at, giant, huge bat creature or into a giant, space whale thing. I mean,
I
it's
always kind of thought they were kind of giant sea monkeys.
well. Plus, also introducing them earlier was always a good idea from the prior two versions of it, because it starts introducing the idea that the universe of Dune has so many different competing elements of power. That's
Yeah.
where all these plans within plans, wheels within wheels keep coming from. So these
And
events have a lot of people interested in it. So now they've
and
been kind
that's
of moved to the background.
yeah, I thought that was actually something that was going to be in this version, and I was kind of disappointed it wasn't. But there was one before we get to the other big issue I had with the movie. Um, the other issue I had was the John Gador scene, the box.
Oh, the Gom Jabbar.
Yeah,
Hmm.
because they moved the line from Paul to Jessica, the famous line.
Oh, well, it
And
actually
the
kind of
way
makes
they shot
sense.
it, it was more like Jessica was kind of influencing Paul when it's
Well,
supposed to be
here's the
Paul.
thing, though. That actually makes sense for one major reason. The whole time we're watching the movie, we don't hear their thoughts very much. Even
I
Paul,
know.
when he's having visions, is a partial exception to that. But even then, they kind of make a point to have him actually try to monologue a bit, just to say what he's seeing sometimes.
Yeah, they didn't do the David Lynch thing of
Yeah. So in the actual book, he thinks those words. Paul
yeah,
is
I know.
thinking them. They're how he overwhelms. But to keep with the flow that we're trying to maintain, where we're just going on, where we're not having internal thought monologues, um, someone has to say it. It can't be Paul because he's they're trying to control the pain. So Jessica becomes the logical choice to be saying that to fill in for him. So that part actually makes sense to me. For the
I
choices
just
they
think
made, it
it
flows naturally.
changes the nature of the scene. That's all because it's Paul supposed to be overcoming the
Well, and he
test.
is, and it's just her just trying to repeat the mantra, kind of on his behalf, in a way, just kind of trying to mentally,
Eh,
not necessarily really physically helping him, but just in a way that a mother when her child is in danger, and just trying to hope he's remembering this mantra, and maybe for a little bit of her own benefit. But yeah, overall, the vision is there. They for a version that actually is breaking it down to two separate movies, I like to think they could have gotten more details in, but they captured enough. So it's all
eh.
in all pretty good.
The
Uh,
only other this is the major issue I had an issue with. I had two major issues. I had minor quibbles. My other big issue was the music. I thought it was like, okay. There were some moments like the throat singing, which didn't bother me, but overall, the music just kind of sounded like Hans Zimmer uh, phoned it in. And then, but I will say this I don't know where it came from, but I enjoyed the bagpipes.
yeah,
Here comes the Atreides,
yeah,
that
yeah.
famous family of bagpipers.
Well, I think at this point they have a very diverse. I mean, when you're this far into the future,
I
everybody's going
know.
to have a pretty diverse ethnic background if you want to,
Well, to
track it
be
all back to
fair,
Earth.
there are Greek and Turkish bagpipes.
Yeah, yeah. But again, it's a complex history, and we choose certain elements to be associated with the Atreides because when you take those elements of certain cultures, then you can kind of attribute certain characteristics from those cultures. So
Well,
bagpipes are considered a noble trait. Basically we also associate them more with Scots and Irish, but with codes of honor, military discipline, and so forth. You wouldn't see the Harkonnen playing bagpipes at any of their festivals. They just
no, they took out all the culture of the Harkonnens.
yeah,
Where's
I'm
my
assuming
redheaded car? Where are my
or
redheaded Harkonnens?
or just any military music they would play would probably a lot of drumming and I don't know coordinated slave screaming. You play this
Well,
by
they
slaves.
tried to do it in the Lynch version. Most people hated it. It
Yes,
was that strange blowing. It was described in the book, and it doesn't work. It just sounds like this horrible cat that they caught, and they are killing it over and over again. It's the
yes,
scene where the Baron's just floating around Fade, and it's the scene right before he goes up to Raban and says, "Squeeze, squeeze."
yes, yes. But of course, no fade.
Yeah,
So
and
that kind of out. I
and I
don't
don't
know.
think they
I don't.
wanted to have Scar just floating around as flying mountain.
And truthfully, that is the only well, not the only concern, but of the concerns I have going into the second movie, because there's like in all cases like this, there's still plenty of for them to screw it up on the next part. Um, is if they took it out because they felt it wasn't important and there's other things they wanted to focus on, okay. Or are they trying to dumb it down because one of the barriers between Dune and a lot of the possible audiences that it is complex science fiction, it is wheels within wheels, it is a collection of a lot of different themes. Um, if they're, I'm hoping they're not trying to dumb it down because also things are going to get a lot more complicated in the next half of the book slash movie. Uh, so that would
Well,
be very bad if they try to cut things out of that because that's really just going to leave things cheap. And that in that point, right now it has the potential to be possibly the best version if they keep up the current level of quality. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
I just wish somebody would re-edit the music. Throw in Toto's music. I always could hear the golden path in there.
You
That
know,
part where da na na na. That's the
what
golden path.
I think at the very end, didn't we catch a little bit of the original Dune theme from the Lynch movie? And
Yeah,
I think Zimmer borrowed a few bars there at the end. I'd have to
yeah.
listen to it again, but oh well.
I'd have to, and I don't like that one. I
Okay.
really think Hans Zimmer phoned it in. The one thing that I've noticed is either people love the music or they're like, wow, this is terrible. And I
Uh,
love the Man of Steel soundtrack, and other people hate it.
well, it worked for me. As far as I'm concerned, personally, it worked. It got the job. It moved the scenes along. It did. I don't know. I'm not going to hate it. Not going to super play it up either. It did the job. That's in this case that's gonna be good enough.
But
Let's see.
overall, in the box office in 2021, we've seen two phenomenon: delays and anime.
Okay, so the other big thing going on right now, obviously, is the My Hero Academia movie, World Class Heroes, I believe it is. Uh,
Yeah, you get this if you actually go see it in the theaters.
yeah, I need to check that out too, because gosh, I think they just passed. Actually, I think $33 million point now, which is pretty darn good for a domestic U.S. anime release.
Oh yeah.
Uh, yeah, which I mean, at this point, with Hollywood having kind of conceded worldwide cultural leadership, yeah, it just shows the Japanese are kind of moving in. Though the question, though, because that's the thing well, it's good to see this stuff starting to come in. I mean, obviously we've had a lot of the Miyazaki films who have come in and made big impressions before already, but this is the first time we're moving to something that's not an art piece, something that's actually more of the general bread and butter entertainment.
Yeah.
And it's good that it's moving, but at the same time, well, the problem with the My Hero Academia movie is that it's actually not that good.
Yeah.
Oh
Of
no,
the My Hero Academia movies, I would have said this is the weakest one.
well, and actually, all three of them are, to be blunt, not very good if you really want to break it down, because they come from this whole thing, this whole pattern that the Japanese have that when they do animated movies for franchises that already exist, i.e., these are not standalone Miyazaki pieces, but these are actually like, oh, we've got Dragon Ball Z, we've got My Hero Academia.
It's a
Let's film
Gadian
that stuff.
story. It's a side
Well,
story.
well, and that's the thing, though. That's the problem. So it either becomes a let's just compile as much of the series we can into one film feature
Compilation.
film that other people who so people who don't want to watch the series can just go see that and get their taste of that series, um, or it's side story that is completely out of sync with the rest of the main line of the franchise, doesn't fit anywhere time wise, might even contradict things. It's
We
just
don't know where it takes place.
and part of that is the fact that they tend to do the whole project system, where basically a particular franchise will have one group, a project board with representatives from all the different groups that are doing the different elements of media for this one particular franchise, and they'll kind of divvy out projects. And it's cool from a marketing standpoint. That's why they tend to have so much swag and so much good merch for all the franchises. But when it comes to coordinating, a multimedia plot, they kind of tend to fall on their face when we get stuff like this. And this, unfortunately, is a perfect example. The My Hero Academia movies do not sync at all with what's going on in the actual, seasons of the TV series. They can be kind of fun. I mean, I enjoyed the other two. I'll go ahead and check this one out too, probably in theaters.
Yeah, it
Uh,
was the weakest one. I'll say that
yeah.
up front. It was enjoyable. Animation was good because Studio Bones puts in good, action, but it was a weak plot.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If Japan really wants to break into the American theater scene and really bring all that incredible creative material they've built up over the last few years and are going to be producing going forward, that is one of the things that they really need to do. Is that they need to kind of get out of some of these old patterns, which really don't serve very well in the global markets. And to some cases, they have, like with Dragon Ball, when they did the Super Saiyan God movie, and then they did the Frieza Resurrection movie. They turned around and actually integrated those directly into the TV series.
I know.
So watching that, seeing that movie actually meant something for the
Yeah.
fans.
Well, that's kind of what they did with Demon Slayer, which had a worldwide box office of 503 million.
Yeah, but how much in the US?
Let me get that.
Because Japan already is making huge inroads into China and Asia. But it's the US market that they've gotten so deep into over the years in some ways. I mean, obviously, anime is becoming just so, and manga are both so prevalent, but at the same time, there's always that last little barrier, that last
It
line.
made 47.7 million in the US and Canada.
Yeah.
But the budget for it, I love the budget.
Oh,
15.8 million.
Oh yeah, and for any animated project in Japan, even for a movie, that would probably pay for it right there by itself if they had nothing else. Getting that after having already paid for it and successfully released it in Japan and Asia, that's all gravy. That's just $50 million more dollars on the pile. So, oh yeah, I
Yeah.
mean it's profitable, and that's why they're still looking at it. But yeah, part of it is that they do kind of need to work on their writing game and work on their franchising game.
I just wish that US studios wouldn't say, well, you can do better than that. I am not looking forward to Cowboy Bebop on Netflix.
Yeah, that's what that trailer they put out where they're trying to mimic the original opening credits. I I respect that they tried, but it feels so wrong. Some things just don't carry over from animation to real life, and you have to change them to try to recapture the same feeling. A
Yeah.
literal interpretation is actually the wrong way to try to do it.
Well,
That's
they
part
didn't
of what's
even
going
do a
on here.
literal interpretation. Piat the Fool was, instead of, big floating fat guy, is kind of thin. And what other thing was really noticeable? And where's Jet's ship? Other than the Bebop, you have his little whaling ship.
Oh, the one with the big docking crane thing on the back.
Yep.
Well, I don't know. I mean, they haven't showed it yet, but they can do that at any
No, they
point.
have not put it anywhere. We've seen Faye's little ship. We've seen Spiegel's fighter, but we haven't seen Jet's.
Swordfish and the red tail. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was Jet Black's ship?
Yeah,
What was the
it
name of
always
that one?
escapes me. It's just he had it. It's not something that, it's one of those things. It's like everyone asking, where's Ed? There's been absolutely no.
Hammerhead. That's what it is. It's the hammerhead.
Okay, the hammerhead.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think they're really quite getting it though. I mean, I hate. I just get the feeling that while they're trying so hard to capture some of the superficial stylistic elements of it,
Well,
and in fact, I can even appreciate the efforts they're making on some of that. I think there's a lot of production staff who are really trying to do that. At its core, from what I'm hearing, and also just the ways they are interpreting some things, like with Vicious and such, it doesn't feel quite right.
well,
I don't think they're really hitting it. I don't
well,
think they really can hit it because
they did this separate trailer where Spike sees Vicious, and I'm like, Spike doesn't just have random PTOSD from Vicious. It's usually after a fight where he saw Vicious that he starts thinking of Vicious. He doesn't think of Vicious every moment. He wasn't, if that was true in Mushroom Shamru, the one where they all take the mushrooms that are supposed to be tainted, he would
the
have seen a
psychotropic
vision
mushrooms.
yeah, he would have seen a vision of Vicious instead of that frog. And I love that line from the frog. This is the stairway to heaven. And then Spike replies, dumb frog, and keeps walking.
Mm-hmm.
Because Spike, he's kind of doesn't care about his past until it comes back into his face. He's trying to escape his past. He isn't trying to, well, got to think about Vicious because people
Well,
like,
yeah. If he encounters Vicious, I mean, that's what
yeah,
if he encounters Vicious, he's just going to try to shoot him real quick.
yeah. He's
Immediate.
not, he's not lingering on it. He's not thinking Greenbird is not going off in the background every 5 minutes in his head. But it goes ultimately to kind of this problem that we're having in media that happened with No Time to Die in the US. I don't know what the director was trying to do with that movie, but he failed. He alienated the core audience of Bond films, which are,
Yeah.
And for who was he trying to attract for No Time to Die? And it's
Yeah,
not
and
that
that's
hard.
it is the overall problem with Hollywood right now is that all these projects just get separated from their actual core audiences. They get separated from their fan base, and they get separated from the people that they're supposed to originally appeal to. And then they just, I don't know if half the time they just expect people to show up anyway, and so they feel they can just get away with this. Like, okay, we can just insult things, distort things, and people, the people out there will just buy their tickets anyhow, and that'll be the end of it. Um, or if they feel that they can actually try to remarket that to people who are more in their line of thinking, to people more in the woke zone. I mean, either way, it doesn't work.
Oh, I know.
Basically, there aren't enough people in the woke side to make up for the ticket losses, and the people who are actually in the original fan base actually notice now. It's happened enough times that people just go, you know what? It is time to go enjoy other entertainment.
Yeah. And that's actually why Paramount's sitting on Top Gun Maverick. Paramount needs to make sure that's a hit just because so much money is riding on it at the studio. So that's why they keep delaying it. And I'm going to guarantee it will make money because one, Tom
Right.
Cruise is a producer and he's not going to go there and say, well, I'm a 60-year-old fighter pilot. Like that's actually, I guess it's possible, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, usually the only time a 60-year-old member of the Air Force is an A fighter, it's because he's making his
Naval.
honorary last flight, or okay, of the Navy. That's right, because he's a naval aviator. But yeah, it's when they're making the last flight. That's usually the
I
only
know.
time they're getting into a fighter. But yeah, I mean, is he 60 years old in the movie? I thought
He's
they,
57. I'm just saying it's
yeah.
nearly 60-year-old. They never really say how old Maverick is in the original movie.
Well, it's the concept then. It's
I
just
know, but
now he's the grizzled old veteran who's they have to deal with all these young people.
except for he's Tom Cruise, so he doesn't look grizzled.
Exactly. They're kind of trying to get the best of both worlds there.
Yes. But
But
I the thing with that movie is there's no bad buzz.
yeah, it's mainly just a matter. I think the only thing they're just waiting for is they just want proof that the theater going market has actually recovered from the pandemic. And once they're convinced that's the case, they'll put it out there immediately. Just
Oh yeah.
we'll get the cash. I think that's all it comes down to. There's no problems in the back. It's not part of the rest of the problems we're talking about. There, it's a purely financial decision, just waiting for the right time to let it drop. Because and it is one of those movies that you're going to enjoy most if you see it in the theater where they have the great sound system. So because it's you're not there to get into the plot, you're just there to enjoy watching all the fighters zoom around and make maneuvers and maybe blow things up.
Oh,
It's going to be all about the sound system, all about the theater experience.
anyway, so
Interesting. Okay.
box office is what it is. Let's talk about a better success story. Six Flags Over Texas.
Yes, the other nerd obsession theme parks. Yes, and Over Texas is coming back. They won that Renaissance Award from the Golden Tickets.
Yeah.
They're actually trying to give them a nod, trying to the parks getting back in order.
Well,
After a lot of years of being allowed to just kind of slouch.
well, the problem with Six Flags is, okay, what's Magic Mountain doing? Well, let's give Magic Mountain something. Let's do something for Magic Mountain. Okay, not everybody lives in California. Then again, half of Los Angeles can't get to Magic Mountain because of traffic issues. But
well, it's about where the money was going, and they obviously thought Magic Mountain was their crown jewel that was always going to be the highest earner. So they obviously put the resources in there.
And then last year occurred.
Well, it's also just the fact that you know what, some of these parks they manage, they have management deals with them, so they're splitting income sometimes with multiple parties. That's not the case with Over Texas. They own it. It's the original park, and they actually have complete control. They get all the revenue, and it's in one of the largest. It already is one of the largest metropolitan,
And growing.
metropolitan areas inside the United States, and still growing and just growing more now probably. So it really should have been getting higher priority to begin with, and
They kind of let it go to
then it took a pandemic coming through to come through and shut down all the other parks, and then Texas became one of the first places to actually reopen, and suddenly the original park plus Fiesta Texas and San Antonio are keeping the company alive.
yes.
So,
One thing about the Six Flags Corporation last year is they came up with inventive new ways of making money. For a while, they were using the quarry walls at Fiesta Texas, for instance, as makeshift drive-in theater.
Right. Or especially the holiday lights exhibits, which are now the big thing in almost all their parks, because people never get out of their cars. They just drive through, look at the lights, pay a couple dollars on the way in. It basically pays just enough for the electricity for the lights.
Well, you have to run the rides every once in a while. They really break down.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Right? As it stands right now, I mean, most of the parks are technically open.
Yeah. Well, is LeBron open? Did LeBron open this year?
Well, no, that one's pretty low down the totem pole. But the main thing is all the ones that should be above Over Texas in priority, all are still operating in limited capacity. So like Magic Mountain is still it's technically open and has its normal schedule back, but you can't get in without proving that you don't have COVID, or that we're providing proof of vaccination, and we're taking a test there. Which suffice to say makes the whole experience very unpleasant. So that's keeping their numbers down.
And yes, LeBron did open this year.
All right. But looking at the other big parks though, like a Great Adventure or New England, all parks that are supposed to be ranked, they're usually ranked above over Texas. They're all in either limited hours or they're just doing the holiday light special this year and that's it. Uh, I mean,
I think all of the Six Flags parks opened at some point this year. It's just
yeah,
they
just
all
there's different definitions to being open, to
yeah.
being having multiple days a week, to having actual events going versus just a holiday lights drive through. Yeah, at this point, Over Texas and Fiesta Texas are the only ones which are fully operational, which are doing full year round schedules, doing multiple days a week, not just Saturday, Sunday, and doing full hour runs, and basically just trying to make money for the company.
Yeah.
Uh, which means it's no surprise that they had already moved their corporate headquarters back down here to Texas, but that was Grand Prairie. And now they're literally just down the street from it.
Yeah.
They actually moved their offices into the former ballpark, which I
Brand
also have
new
to
ballpark.
wonder. Which I also have to wonder if that's even kind of a reach out to the city of Arlington,
Yeah.
because maybe their way of saying that, hey, we're doing you a favor because you've got this massive ballpark. You're trying to figure out how to keep it as a viable asset. And two, or B, I think that's it there. And B, besides doing that, this just shows we are part of this massive entertainment complex you've built in your city. We're not just this legacy thing where, we have this complex with these great stadiums. Oh, and Six Flags is over there because they've always been over there. No, they're actually
Now,
part of this whole thing and they need to be directly integrated with it. So I think that's part of them putting themselves front and center saying, hey, we are part of all of this.
yeah, and let's put it this way: Ron McKenzie, who used to be the GM at Fiesta Texas, which if you've never been to Fiesta Texas in San Antonio, you should probably go there, especially with the new drop coaster coming. But
Yes.
he is reviving the cave, which some people are like, oh no, the spelunkers are coming back. Their eyes will pierce me. And they're finally opening Aquaman Power Splash after getting the turntable installed next year. So 2 new rides, but this year he brought back the original log flume, which had been closed for years, and Casa Manetica, which, it's something. But he cleaned up that, but he's also going around and he's repainting the coasters one by one, getting them cleaned up so they're not as faded from the Texas sun, which if you've ever been in the Texas sun, it hurts. And he's making all the stuff look like it's new, cleaning it up.
Yeah, and he's trying to put some character back in the park too. I mean, it's cleanup. It's actually giving the park some character again after just decades of being used as a money machine.
Yeah.
And yeah, and they need to invest in it now. They need to realize the value of the asset, and he's the kind of guy who can actually take whatever they give him and put it to good use. The question now is, what are they going to give him? Because there's 2 rides at least that one that's kind of already in crisis. Judge Roy Scream is already an incredibly painful ride. It's just amazingly rough. Just a bunch of really old trains on a track which they keep trying to rebuild, but it still just doesn't feel quite right, which is a pretty strong warning that the whole foundation is not settled correctly. Basically, it's becoming something that people just don't want to ride anymore. And then we have the Titan, which it still more or less works, but there's just more and more little maintenance issues piling up. The original manufacturer's out of business, so
Yeah,
we can't go back
Vanelli.
to them. I mean, the actual structure, those big steel structures, great thing about those, of course, is that, they'll last for decades if you can find parts to keep all the subsystems attached to them working. But I think from the sound of it, that's becoming harder and harder from what we're seeing and what we're hearing.
And
So,
personally, I want the poor people of California to keep their record-breaking ride at the time, Titan, alive.
you mean the Goliath?
Yes, Goliath.
Yes, the Titan's twin coaster over in Magic Mountain.
Yes, any
Yes.
parts that come from Titan may save Goliath for another couple years.
Now, seriously, tear it down and build us something new.
Yeah.
take our
Yeah.
noble donation and give us something cool in return. But yeah, and that's the thing. So Titan will be needing something. I mean, not immediate. Again, they can probably keep the thing going. The structure is going to be good for decades more. But they can probably find the parts for the 3 years operation. But they really need to be planning to replace it before that becomes a real crisis. But right now, Judge Roy Scream already is in crisis. Its value as a ride has already declined to the point where they just need to just tear it down and build something in its place. Just the giant question mark is, what do they build? Another wooden coaster, and if so, is it just a clone of Judge Roy Scream with a better track design that's new trains, or is it a much more ambitious design? Because let's be honest, while the Scream, when it was working properly, it was a fun coaster, but it was very basic. I mean, it literally is just
It's an out and back wooden
yeah,
coaster.
it's a loop. You just do you go up the hill, go down, come back around your back. That's it.
Well, you get some airtime hills, you do the turnaround, you get a couple more bunny hills, then you come to a stop.
right.
It's a
And
classic out and back coaster. It doesn't duel, it's just kind of there.
but those kinds of coasters were built back in the 1920s. I mean, there were much in fact, even I think the first like cyclone designs, which actually would have it kind of cut back into itself and go back out again, just really trying to use the space to get more distance and more action out there before bringing the riders back in. Um, Stuff like that had already been very much a norm by the time they built the Scream. So it's just a very unambitious design. I mean, they built it simple. So this is a good opportunity to actually make it more interesting, to add some more stuff on there. So even if you want to keep a wooden coaster,
that it's 4 years younger than Six Flags Astroworld's Texas Cyclone, which was a beloved ride that remains in our hearts. But Judge Roy Scream was not that ambitious at the time. The biggest thing that you can say about it was built by William Cobb.
Yes, and that is, I have to admit, that is one of the things when I mean, to any listeners, both Matthew and I are members of ACE, American Coaster Enthusiasts. So that Judge Roy Scream is considered a historical coaster by ACE. So there's a lot of people who are very attached to it, both just as being a classic Woody, as they would say, and also having a famous designer. That is one issue why some people don't want to tear it down, but we're past that point. And frankly, with a wooden coaster, it has to be kind of understood. Any wooden structure like that, even if you don't do a massive tear down, the amount of maintenance you have to do on those, you are technically gradually just tearing it down over time. Every plank of wood will have to be replaced at some point or another on there in a very constant, ongoing process. So
it's there by that small lake at the front of the park,
which definitely is not helping.
Yeah, so water and wooden coasters don't mix well. It's just something about it. You have to constantly replace the wood because water is one of the great destroyers of wood.
Which raises the question, then replace it with something completely different, not another wooden coaster, not just a completely different type of ride, something made out of steel. Maybe we could finally get a Wonder Woman themed ride in there. She's the one major DC character that hasn't gotten a ride over Texas.
And an access coaster by S&S.
Yeah, it might fit. Because it depends if they want to go out over, because it's a pretty good sized chunk of land. Yeah, that's why it is such a kind of a tragedy that it was such an unambitious design that left so much open space, both in between the two sides of the loop and even next to the coaster.
Ironically,
utilize it.
Before they built Titan, there was a bid by Aerodynamics to build a hypercoaster in that plot. They went over the water.
Yeah, there you go. It would definitely have to do that to get a hyper in there. Though that's where everybody kind of is thinking about. But here's the thing too: is whatever you build there, you don't want to duplicate whatever you're doing to replace Titan. And that's so the discussion with Titan is maybe having RMC come in and putting in one of their new single track coasters there, but a bigger one, a hyper even giga sized one. Exactly, the T-Rex. So if you do that there, it would seem kind of redundant to build a smaller one over where the Judge Roy Scream is. But RMC also does, of course, lots of great wooden conversions, or they have the 303 track, I believe it's called, which is the new wooden track.
Which also another company, GCI, has the Titan track, which I tried when I went to Orlando during my period of remorse earlier in the year. And I rode White Lightning, which had replaced parts of it with the Titan track. first parts of White Lightning, yeah, I was shaking like it was going out of style. One of those things you should not build in Florida, a wooden coaster. It will fall apart. But
Well, it means you have to keep building it. You
yeah,
basically
but
have to keep
when I went
rebuilding
over
it
the
again and
Titan
again.
track, it was smooth as butter. And then
Yes.
back to jackhammering.
Well, and that's the thing. So it just comes down to that they need a coherent plan. They just need to say, okay, both these coasters have to come out. And while they're at it, I mean, some people talked about taking Spinnaker, that little spinner ride that they pulled from Astroworld and put next to the Titan. That spot could be good for something. For example, Zamperla built the Daredevil flying machines, the big huge air race ride, the Fiesta Texas. You could probably fit one of those in there, that just with a little bit of expansion.
And it's
Uh,
the Texas Sidewinder, not the Spinnaker.
yeah, I think they renamed it to that. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, the point is basically this would all be nice if they have a big coherent plan that okay, we're going to upgrade the park and you would reinvest in some of these rides. These two need to go. These maybe even these three need to go. And here's the suite of rides, a collection that's going to replace them. We'll see. And I mean, at the same time, too, it's not just the rides they need to bring in, not just new rides. I mean, they need to restore a lot of the theming. I mean,
Yeah.
Casa Magnetica, the Spelunkers coming back. Those are good starts, but a few years ago, I was at the park with my father and my nieces and nephews, and so it was kind of a nice family event with them riding the mine train. Because when the mine train opened, my father was actually there as a teenager on that opening day. So being able to ride it with his grandchildren was a nice experience. But he mentioned to me that he remembers it being better. And for a while, I was thinking like, oh well, that's probably just time, but there's just this perception, that the past always seems nicer than the current. But then a few weeks ago, some people started posting some really old pictures of what the mine train actually was like when it was originally opened, and this extraordinary theming they did around it. Waterfalls. The actual track was running over the Caddo Canoe Lake. When you would make some of these big dives down into the tunnels, those tunnels were surrounded by water, so it's like for a moment you would think you were diving into the lake. um, much more thrilling experience.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just him wearing rose-colored glasses, looking rearward. It was a better experience. He was absolutely right.
Well,
And that's
it
the question: is can they bring any of that back
well,
to across the park? A lot of these rides would be much better if they had the proper theming attached to them. And right now, it's a little sparse. They're trying, but again, a coherent plan is needed
well,
to bring all this in proper stages to turn the park into a final finished product that they've already decided on what it should be and can be.
is it possible? Yes. For instance, there's an old Arrow ride at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, called the Loch Ness Monster. Is
Mm.
it possible to restore an old Arrow? Yes, especially the mine trains. You just have to work at it. And I think Ron McKenzie might be working at it, especially since the Runaway Mine Train was the first Arrow mine train.
Well, and it's not just the mine train though. I mean, the mine train would be one of the first ones on the list because it was so much better with its theming, but just across the park, both adding the new rides and adding all the theming, they can't just do this all piecemeal. I mean, the
I know.
magic question is there a folder somewhere at Six Flags headquarters that contains the grand plan for Six Flags Over Texas, what it's supposed to be
Probably.
towards? The exact order in which everything goes in, and exactly how long it takes them, because budgets are a real concern, of course. So have to see how
Yeah.
each year proceeds. What can they actually afford to do that year? That part can vary, but question is, do they have that one coherent vision of where it's going to go and what it's going to be? And man, I would really love to know because
I
I
think
would
they
love to
do.
see what they're thinking of.
Well,
So
they're also going to redo the parking lot. Yay.
yeah, that's what I'm wondering though, because if they're just going to resurface it, okay, good. Yeah, it is pretty rough to put it mildly. And it could use some new allocation of exits and entrances and sort that's more efficient, because you can tell where they've just added on additional parking blocks over time to try to handle the capacity as it's built up over the years, and that all really does need to be reconciled into a coherent system. Uh,
Well,
but the real thing is they need a parking structure. They need a big parking structure.
You want the
Uh,
universal Disney parking structures, don't you?
well, because they need the land. I mean,
I know.
they don't only need space for the cars, but they need to take some of that land back that's been eaten up by parking spaces over the years, and they need to repurpose that to put some attractions in.
I know.
So they just need one massive parking structure at the end of the current. I mean, the way I see it right now is they have the preferred parking up towards the closer to the park, and then you just go off into the endless rows of added on parking lots.
Never be there at near closing on
Yeah,
holiday in the park.
but yeah, the way I see it is the preferred parking could stay at where it is right now. Let's leave that as is. But the areas going back, those get consolidated into this giant parking structure, and the areas that kind of go off into the right, towards Titan and Giant and all that, that stuff just needs to become part of the park again. That just need to expand the fences, encompass all that, and start building inside. That just needs to be the new part of the park.
Well, you could also move back the offices. That would open up space
Mm. Well,
into the parking lot area.
yeah, they need space to work. Oh yeah, well yeah, that probably what they would actually do is actually just move the back room, back end stuff would go into that, and the area those vacate would then.
Yeah.
Yes.
It would be nice to build a Disney or Universal style parking lot.
Yeah, or just I mean, it doesn't need to be that impressive, but just yeah, just the parking needs to be moved into an actual structure because the current system of what they built over time, we have lots of land, so just add some concrete and parking problem solved. That doesn't work in the long run. And the long run is here. It's no
Yeah.
longer a long term issue. It's an issue now created by people putting things off for too long. They need that land back, and that means that they need to invest in the parking structure.
Well, you could add another coaster or a couple more rides and possibly a new stadium or something.
Uh,
If
which
I
I,
was if I was going to build a new if I was going to build a new wooden coaster, it'd be over where the current amphitheater is.
yeah, and in fact, that might make sense too, because I think part of the issue is also that they don't really the Music Mill amphitheater over there is not what they would like it to be.
On the
Uh,
northwest side of the park.
yeah, because it's also kind of a weird size because it's really big in terms of in theme park terms. So it's taking up a big piece of land, which is really inconvenient. And they have trouble filling it most of the time. Most of the shows there don't usually have a full house or anywhere near. But it's not big enough to do some of the things that back in the day they would actually have like major musical acts coming through and they would use the Music Mill amphitheater. But now the numbers that they need to fill in there to make that worthwhile are so big and it can't take those numbers, so that's just come to a screeching halt. So it's in this weird in between state where it's not big enough but it's so big that it's really kind of eating up resources that could be better used for other things. So yeah, that kind of makes sense too, where if you take the reclaimed land from the parking lot, build a properly sized amphitheater.
Well,
uh,
you could also that way you could also sell tickets directly into the amphitheater so that
yes, yes.
from the parking lot, thus you don't have to have them go through the gate.
Well, that becomes the argument then is the properly sized amphitheater bigger than the current one or smaller? If it's smaller, then it just integrates with the rest of the park. If it's bigger, if they're trying to get those performances back, then yeah, like you're saying, then that point, being able to sell movie tickets just for it would become a major selling point. In fact, a vital point actually, something you'd have to do to make it viable.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting
Plans
idea.
within plans. But I expect
Again,
good things.
they need a coherent master plan if
They
that's going to work.
probably have one, considering Ron McKenzie is on the case. Why don't we end this with just some thoughts on Halloween, Hallows Eve.
Halloween. What are we talking about? Oh, that's right. It's tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, we're aiming to post this on Halloween.
Yes, yes. So that's the thing. Okay, so obviously I'm kidding. It's obviously Halloween, and in fact today I was with my nieces and nephews at a trunk or treat thing at one of the churches that they go to.
Mm.
And that's the kind of thing I've noticed lately these days about Halloween is that most people I know are not doing like just open trick or treating with their kids anymore, which kind of disappoints me. And the last few years, just every place I've lived, I haven't really seen kids coming by anymore, which is kind of disappointing. It seems everybody's just doing more like local specific events. Even before the pandemic came in, people started doing more and more stuff either at their church, at their school, holding parties with friends. What I grew up with, where the whole neighborhood was doing it, and the neighborhood association would arrange for volunteers, would kind of standardize the times we would all go out. And when we went out, there was every kid in the freaking neighborhood was out there. It was really just between houses getting candy, you could just look around and enjoy the procession of people in costumes. I don't see that very much anymore, unfortunately. That kind of saddens me. It really does. Halloween's become more of a private event as opposed to a public event like it used to be.
Well, it was meant to be a public event.
Yeah, which makes it weird that now it's less. I mean, I'm sure there's neighborhoods where they're still like that. I occasionally hear people talk about like, oh yeah, they got a decent candy haul from their neighborhood, but or their kid did. But
Well,
yeah, not as much as I used to. I mean, most times when I do people talking about that, or I'm even asked to help with something like that, it's always a smaller event that's carefully controlled. At a church, at a school, whatever.
yeah.
So yeah, it's like,
Well, for me, I got out trick or treating very early. Ironically, it was when I was 8. It was also the same year I nearly perished, but from a totally separate issue with just my family's allergies and asthma. But earlier, it was Halloween. I was helping out the Boy Scout thing for some unknown reason. And we were doing this with the Girl Scouts. And then I was supposed to be picked up to go trick or treating. And my father was late. So basically, I spent an hour waiting for my dad. And I never trick or treated again after that.
how old were you at the time?
8.
Wow. So I guess, well, yeah, that is kind of the prime year.
Yeah.
One of those prime years for
Most,
it, but
there were kids who went till they were teenagers who I knew. They got
yeah,
lamer every year, but still, they
yeah,
kept
I
doing.
think I was 10 or 11 the last time I did it, I think.
But
Yeah. So your dad not showing up mentally scarred you against trick or treating?
yeah, that's why I've never
Oh.
really cared for Halloween.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I'm sad to hear that, but yeah, I think it is becoming just overall more of a private event thing then.
Yeah.
So
But
that's something too. Is also if related to the whole costume game, which I don't know. Weird thing is that that's not as distinctive a thing as it used to be. Because it used to be like, okay, Halloween was the one time of year that that was your excuse to go try out a costume or something.
yeah,
And now we have tons of conventions. Like God, almost every single month there's an anime convention, a retro game convention. I was
Anime
impressed.
Frontier in December.
Yeah, I was impressed at Retropalooza. They had a cosplay section that was actually pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah.
They were lining up after we're leaving that panel about the Game Chaser movie. I was kind of looking, wow, some of these are actually really impressive. Some people are bringing their A game, or at least like
Well,
plus game.
considering a lot of them were stuck inside and they've just been waiting for some reason.
But yeah, I mean, now you can dress up almost any time. Halloween's just again, it's not the social event it was, and it's not the unique event that it was anymore.
Yeah, and that's kind of one. Have you ever seen the Halloween tree?
I have not.
It's this animated movie by Hanna-Barbera right before they got absorbed totally into Warner. It's narrated by Leonard Nimoy, and it was based on a story by Ray Bradbury.
Ray Bradbury, and Leonard Nimoy.
Yes. Why is it I'm the only person who ever watched this stuff?
That is crazy. Okay.
It's on iTunes and other services. So if anybody's looking for something and we somehow got this posted on Halloween, just go rent it or buy it. Halloween tree. See how Halloween was. or just go watch Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
Okay, I guess that's maybe the one tradition that might survive that we can all indulge in is obviously on Halloween night, whip out a good horror movie or perhaps a good horror game. So I think I mean to go through the Castlevania collection again. Might be a good idea to try that tomorrow night. Get some of that in.
Bloodstained
Oh, there you go. There you go.
for a more modern take. Or you can, they did come out with the Castlevania Advanced anthology recently, which has all the Game Boy Advance Castlevania games on it, including Circle of the Moon and Harmony of Dissonance and Ario of Sorrow, where Matthias turned into Soma.
Well, there's also the Resident Evil games, and frankly, the remakes are so short you probably could play through them entirely on Halloween night.
Yes.
I think
Resident Evil 3, for instance.
yes, which don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. It was a fun play, but yeah, it was awfully short. But hey, there you go. That might make it good for a Halloween playthrough.
You might not finish the whole game in one night, but Resident Evil 8 or Resident Evil Village, I love that game.
I have not played it yet. I know it's just
Well,
everyone says it's good. It's yeah, exactly, and or at least trying to. Or actually, I take that back. I have the Xbox Pass, so I'm pretty sure it's on Xbox Pass. So I probably could just hit a button and download it. But yeah, then I'd have to find time to play it, and there's a huge freaking backload.
Well, Halloween, something different.
There you go. Yeah, but you know what? I haven't played. I played.
Well, the weird thing about Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil Village is that it's from a first-person perspective as opposed to the original series where it's a third-person tank controls game. Well, got to go into that corner. Got to slowly move. Uh-oh, zombie got me.
Well, actually, maybe even a better game. Actually, as far as just like horror immersiveness, best one for me was Dead Space. That especially the second one. Oh man, that one actually had some sequences that actually did leave me just like, what just happened?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
well, remember, Dead Space came out after the pinnacle of Resident Evil 4. So they got to see everything that had gone into Resident Evil 4. So then they could take it and say, okay, this is how we do it better. And then they slowly deteriorated.
So your theory then is that Dead Space should really be understood as being Resident Evil in space?
No, it's just they saw what Resident Evil was able to achieve. And then they took the lessons from it and made a better horror game, because they went from the forced perspective of the Resident Evil series to making a full environment where you could interact, as opposed to go into a corner and go into that picture. Even in Resident Evil 4, they were still doing that. But if I was going to be honest, what my favorite one was, that would be Eternal Darkness, Sandy's Requiem, just for the fear effect. A little glitch here, a little glitch there, and suddenly you have a Windows screen pop up.
Which I hate to admit that I've never played Eternal Darkness.
You have never played Eternal Darkness?
No. In fact, I don't think I even have a copy of it for my GameCube collection. Which actually, that at least I have an excuse for, because last I checked, I think the price on that one was pretty silly.
But what is your favorite horror movie for Halloween?
Probably this one's a little different than most because it's not a slasher flick. But my favorite horror movie, and one I also like to watch, particularly watching on Halloween, Room 1408.
Oh,
And not just because I like John Cusack, or having Samuel L. Jackson, kind of semi-narrating there to begin with, when he's just going off the list of horrors that have occurred in the room. It's just, I guess, I like that the torment and the mind game of it.
Mm.
Yeah, the idea that,
So
yeah.
you'd rather watch something like The Shining.
Yeah, I think you could kind of put, because in a way, 1408 is the idea of the hotel, except compacted into a single room.
Yeah,
First, the hotel's fine. Just that one room you don't want to go into at all, ever.
but 1408 doesn't exist anymore. Then where was I last night? And where's the guy who I came in with? Oh, he's been dead.
Oh,
Okay.
no. Have you seen 1408?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was about to say people collect the body afterwards. That part of it, I mean, because that's something, it's all self-contained. That's something that makes the horror that much more. Is it's just there. It's off to the side, and it's so terrible that nobody even wants to acknowledge it. It's
Yeah.
so bad, because to even acknowledge that the room is there and that it does what, and the things that happen and it happened, which is one of those things that people just can't cope with. So they just work around it. Just they don't take any reservations for that room, and when something inevitably happens, everybody just collects the body and moves on. And like, oh,
Well,
another suicide.
one movie that I consider the original Japanese Ringu, I do not think is scary. It's too clean. Everything's clean. It wasn't until you saw the Grudge movies or Genio that you saw this dirtiness to them. But the original Ringu, when they brought the American version out, that movie's superior to the Japanese version. I will die on that hill. But there are two movies that I think are the best horror. The Thing by John Carpenter in 1982. And what's the other one? I had it in my head. Talk.
Oh, actually, The Thing. That is definitely an honorable mention for Halloween. That John Carpenter's The Thing. Oh yeah, that now you mentioned John Carpenter. Yes, that is another one I would definitely watch. In fact, actually, we got into a conversation on that. Or actually, it was a public post on the Game Chasers channel where they put the question out there. So in The Thing, when somebody gets turned into the thing, are they
Just
are they the thing that knows it's the thing, or are they themselves who is the thing but doesn't know they're the thing? Because
I don't know because they don't really show any signs until
exactly, because they seem completely themselves right up to the moment that they suddenly start like ripping apart and tentacles start emerging, and they look so surprised.
except for Wilfred Brimley's character.
Yes, which because he definitely seems much more directed in his actions.
Yeah, well, he was building a small ship of some sort.
Oh, and here we go. And yeah, okay. So it looks like the lowest price you can get away with on a US copy of Eternal Darkness is going to be around $80.
$51 actually, I found.
Yeah, oh, is that the one that's still bidding though?
Ah,
Yeah, I'm looking at completed transactions.
so buy it now.
Ooh, somebody got it for 66.
Eh.
Wow, that's an interesting number. If they got it
Well,
for
no, if
66
they got it for
cents,
66.6 or 600, you get the
yeah,
point.
exactly. Then that would have been like, oh, wow, I think that transaction probably ended badly.
Oh no, it's the cursed copy of Eternal Darkness. The copy pasta, the creepy pasta that coming soon to a bad forum for you. It had the name Rudiger written on it.
But yeah, at some point I should really try to pick up a copy.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe next Retropalooza, we'll see if anybody's got a good condition one that they're willing to try to negotiate something.
Well, you have other conventions you could check, and there's always Retro Madness.
It depends how far. Actually, there is Retropalooza Houston. That's going to be in May, I believe.
Nah.
And then there's also the what's the one that they do down in Austin? We went down there a couple years ago.
You mean the one that's run by Game Over.
Yes. What do they call it? It's like just like the video game. God, what do they call
Well,
it?
you'd have to wonder if they're going to do it this year or not.
Oh, they are. I've seen the emails that they've been soliciting dealers.
Ah, okay.
This is good. I keep forgetting the name of it though, because it's something that sounds like kind of generic. Is what. Da, 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 da. Come on. Classic Game Fest. There we go.
Yeah.
Classic. Yes. I think they had a pretty good show when we were there, I think.
Well, other than I somehow got someone to make the worst controller ever. Never found out how that turned out.
Which actually, in fact, that's something I've been wondering about too. Was with the with Retropalooza kind of expanding over into its hotel now. Up to this point, the hotel has been kind of a completely secondary concern for the convention. Just if you needed a room, it's right there, and they worked out a good room rate. But now they're actually running their panels out of the hotel. Mostly just because the convention center hasn't been reliable in making the panel rooms there available. But still, the hotel has way more panel room space. I mean, gosh, I think it was counting off at least 8 different panel rooms, which they're only using 2. So that could get interesting if they actually start taking advantage of that for Retropalooza and actually adding more events, more presenters. Who knows? And that could be a major push for increasing the prominence of the convention. But anyhow, back to the main topic though. So there's Classic Game Fest. Maybe sneak down there. And then there's Retropalooza Houston. And I think Retro Fest is going to be coming up here.
You also have anime conventions. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but you're not going to find big video game prices there. You'll find an occasional dealer who has some games, but they're going to be charging ridiculous prices.
Every once in a while, Game Over showed up.
Before they closed their 2 locations and 2 of the 3 locations they had up here.
No, they still have the Arlington one, I think.
Yeah, they had 3. Now they're down just to the 1.
Yeah.
And it's the one they're kind of barely hanging on to. Yeah, I feel bad for them. The retro market's gotten just so overheated.
Yes, as we've said.
And then GameStop decided not to die. Everybody thought it was going to.
Hey, I probably should have invested money in that.
Yeah, the whole Game Stonks incident, which has given the company a weird zombie life.
Again, I should have put money where my mouth was because I didn't think they were going to go under.
Oh well.
If I had known what I know now in December of last year, I wouldn't, still be somewhere.
There you go. Okay, I think we have covered the slate of topics for this podcast.
Yes. So remember, we'll be back at some point with another of these podcasts for Nerdmusements.
Remember,
also, we need to copyright that. Nerdmusement. We need to copyright that immediately. Get it on, get the URL, do other things. Make sure that it's taken before someone else gets it all.
Yes.
Anyway, so see you then.
Goodbye.